Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today is Luchke Styles here. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. So we're going about the quick sewing of this beautiful blouse you see right here on the screen. It's a structured stylish blouse, as you can see right here, which has a collar and a symmetric neckline. It also has a stylish shoulder. Then in front of it, you can see that it has a slit, one part being longer than the other part, which is curved. Around the base or the hem of this blouse, you can see the stylish designs in front. And the back of the blouse, you can see that the zipper is fixed towards the sides of the blouse and not at the center. So I enjoyed every bit in the making of this particular blouse, from the drafting to the sewing. So honestly, keep on watching. You never want to miss out on this tutorial. If you are new here, you're welcome. If you have not subscribed, please do to hit on that subscribe button, like, and also share this video. So without much ado, let's get started with what we have for today. So I have all the materials I'll be using in the making of this blouse gathered here, as you can see. So this fabric, which is royal blue in color that has a slight shiny face, is called a mikado. So it's sort of kind of looks like a bridal satin, but it isn't. It's called a mikado, and I use 1.5 yards of this mikado fabric, which is royal blue in color. So this my Ankara fabric right here is for the collar part and also the stylish effect you saw at the base of the blouse. So I actually have gone ahead to do the drafting part in the first part of the tutorial, which I'll be dropping the link in the description box. So if you have not watched out the first part, please kindly do so that I can come back and understand everything I'll be doing right here. So after drafting on my pattern paper, I went ahead to cut out on my fabric. So if there's one thing I want you to notice, is the fact that I didn't fold my fabric while cutting. It's all spread out as well. So that part which I removed was the center front. I saw all the parts where I added my stitching allowance of half an inch. So these are for the two side fronts of my dress. As you can see right here, I added my darts, which I mentioned earlier in the drafting part, and also my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches. I added sewing allowance all around of half an inch at that cuff part, and at the base I added 3/4 inch. For the other side back, which has this cuff, at the top part you can say I added half an inch. At the cuffed part all around half an inch, I replaced my dart and also added 1.5 inches for stitching allowance, and did the same thing for my yoke as well. So this is for the back part of my gown, of my blouse. So this is the side and this is the center back. As you can see, I labeled it right here. I added half an inch sewing allowance all around. For the base I added 3/4 inch, and for this part I added 1 inch because that is where we'll be also fixing our zipper. So exactly on my waistline now, I marked half an inch away from this my 1 inch zipper allowance. Then I'm slanting this way for me to get rid of any sort of bulge. This is for our zipper slant, okay, or zipper slope, but for us to get rid of any type of bulge. So right now you can see I cut this out, and that is for the center back. Now I'm going to get the other, the center back. One part of the center back is smaller, so this is the bigger part of the center back. As you can see right here, I added my 1 inch that and also 1.5 inches stitching allowance. So this is for the other smaller part, and this is the part where our zipper will be fixed. So exactly on that part I added 1 inch, and I'm also going to reduce that part by half an inch and still connect it back this way. At the sides I replaced my dart of 1 inch and also added my seam allowance of 1.5 inches. At the base I added 3/4 inch, which is going to be for our seam allowance, as you can see right here. So I believe this is clear to you all, and please do bear in mind that all of these pieces I have cut out, I also cut out the lining for it exactly the way it is, okay. So back to my center front. This is the center front and this is the two side fronts I have. I'm just going to start assembling all of these pieces together right now, okay. So I'll remove my pins from my pattern paper and flip this my fabric to the right side. Then I'm going to start joining. So you can iron your stay or your paper or your clothes gum, sorry, to this dress or to your blouse on the wrong side, but I didn't have an estee, so I just had to proceed since it is mine already. So I'm simply going to pad this my blouse now because it's a princess dart, okay. So I'm going to pad it, as you can see. So please, first of all, iron your estee to the wrong side before you go ahead to pad this. So I cut out my breast padding. I will drop the link to the tutorial on how to pad your princess dart, but still, okay, that's not what we are in for today. So I now flip this now to the right side because we're going to start joining. So the side front and the center front, I brought them together. I can see now from the under bust, that is where I'm going to pin. So don't forget to notch your under bust, all right. So now I'm going to pin them right sides facing each other. So the reason why you're going to start pinning from your under bust is because of the effects we have at the base of this blouse. If you start joining from the base, you're going to make mistakes and they're not not going to align at all. So that is the reason why you have to start pinning from your underbust. When you must have gotten exactly what you want, make sure that the two underbust matches. That is the one for the side front and your center front. Okay, so whichever excess or whatever you have that doesn't correspond at the base, you can go ahead and trim it off a bit, but it is better the top part aligns first. So I repeated the same thing for this other side, which is also the cuff part. I first of all pinned it on the underbust, as you can see I'm doing right here, all the way to the armhole before I go ahead and now pin the base, okay, or the remaining part for the base. So this is for you to get the accurate measurements of your blouse so that you don't make mistakes or be short of your blouse. Okay, so for this other cuff part of our blouse, you know that it doesn't get up to the actual length of your blouse. Okay, so all I'm going to do here now is to get my underbust of 13 inches. I place my tape right there. So I'm going to stitch this now, starting from my waist line. So my half length is 16 inches, but I marked extra 1.5 inches, making it 17.5 inches. So from there now, that's 17.5 inches, I'm going to stitch this using half of an inch all the way to the top part. But for this other side, which will get up to the full length, you just stitch from the top all the way to the base. Okay, but for the other cuff part, it has no business with getting up to the base. Okay, so now for the center back and also for the back part of our blouse, I'll go ahead and also remove all this paper I have right here. Okay, so remember that whatever I'm doing to my line, to my fabric, I'll be repeating the same thing to my lining piece. Okay, so my lining piece is also blue in color. So this is for the bigger part of my side back. I'm now going to place it right sides facing each other on this cuff part of the center back. So we know that one part of the center back is straight, so on this cuff part, just make sure that they align. Okay, so I'm going to pin them. For the center back, it's totally fine to start pinning from the base, but when you're pinning for the front part, please start from your underbust and pin upward before you now go ahead to pin from your half length below, so whatever it is. So I'll go ahead and also pin this. But for this other smaller side back, I'm going to get that yoke part of my shoulder, which you cut out earlier, right sides facing each other on the shoulder of this other side of my back dress. I'm going to pin them on the shoulder, right sides of my fabric facing each other. Make sure that the armhole part of this your yoke aligns with the armhole part of this back piece. Okay, please just understand what I'm doing right here. Okay, so you can see what I have after sewing for the front part, and I also iron all my seam open. Please go ahead and iron your stay to this, all right, for more stability. So this is the smaller part of the back part. So you can see the joints I have on the shoulder. I also iron the seam open. So right now I'm going to be joining the front and the back part of my blouse together on these other parts which has this normal shoulder, which we did not cut out. Okay, so right sides facing each other, I'm going to join them. Okay, then now I'm done. I also went ahead to iron that seam open. That's the joints I have on the shoulder. So this is what it's going to look like. You can see how nice it's already coming out, despite we are not yet done. So after this, I'm just going to simply go ahead now to work on the base. So because I didn't have this aligning properly at the end of the day, I went ahead to trim off the center part just slightly so that it can match with the side. Okay, so that is the essence of you pinning from the underbust upward. So now I'm going to measure out the neckline of this my front and back dress, because you know we already have it now joined on the shoulder, so that we can cut out our collar. So all around now, the neckline I measured was 27.5 inches. So I'm going to get my Ankara fabric, which will be used in the cutting of the collar. So when you get your Ankara piece, please make sure that you don't fold like this into two. Fold it in a bias. Okay, reason is because if you fold it like this, you're going to have folds and your collar will not relax after fixing it on your dress. Okay, but when you fold like this on a bias, it's going to relax properly. You will not have any folds. So I now marked out my 27.5 inches at both ends, you can see. Then I'll add extra half of an inch at both sides for my sewing allowance. Okay, then I'll now go ahead to measure out the half of this 27.5 inches when I'm done adding my extra half an inch at both sides. Okay, so I get the middle of everything I have here in total. So right here now is my middle. Okay, so this middle now I'm going to go up by at least 4 inches. But if you want your collar to be bolder, you can go up by 6 inches. Okay, I would have wished mine was bolder than it was when I was done. Okay, so at the sides, that at the two ends, I will mark 3 inches. So the middle part is 1 inch higher than the sides. Okay, so whatever you're marking at the sides, at the both sides, should be equal. So now that I've marked this at the both sides, I'll go ahead to connect them together. So you can use your free hand. You're still free to use your ruler to connect them if you feel like. You also can see what I have, and remember this is folded into 2 on a bias. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this out, and remember that my sewing allowance, I added everything here at the same time. Okay, so now that I've cut this out, I'll also notch the middle. So the next I'm going to do now is to turn this now right sides facing each other, and at this point now, this my Ankara is facing the camera. So we are going to actually go ahead to stitch, but I will have to pin first. So we are stitching the sides, the 2 sides, and also stitching this other curved part, because by the time you do exactly what I've done right here, you will notice that the other part is slightly curved. But if you want yours curvier, you can as well go ahead and manipulate that. Okay, so when you are done stitching the base and the sides, you go ahead and now cut out this straight part. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing. So go ahead and cut out this straight part. Just cut it out straight like this. Okay, because after stitching you need to turn it, and this part I'm cutting open is the part where I will turn it out from, and then iron this very well. Okay, so we cut out for the other smaller collar for the shoulder. So you know we already have our yoke and the back part of our shoulder joined together. I measured out what I have, including my zipper allowance of 1 inch. Okay, I'll also fold this in a bias again, and when I measured that out, in total all I had was 11.5 inches. So before I went ahead to mark that, I left about 1 inch space, remember, for our zipper. Just watch carefully, and I'm going to now measure out 11.5 inches exactly on that line. So I'll add half of an inch at the both sides, which is going to be for my joining allowance as well. So I'll get the half of this I have right here now, and I'll mark it as well. So you know that this other part of our collar for the shoulder is smaller. So for the center I mark 3 inches, and for the sides I mark 2 inches, and I'll also connect the same way I did for the bigger collar. Okay, so now for your zipper, okay, you're going to get your shoulder, the part where we'll be fixing this, so that you actually go ahead to place this very well. Okay, so that you know the part that is meant to be curved, so when you are done it can be facing each other very well. Okay, so when I now did this, I now traced out that 1 inch, you can see. So I was supposed to cut out this 1 inch from the top, instead of, no, that's not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like from that chalk mark on top, I'm supposed to measure out 1 inch, and not from the base. Okay, but when I cut out everything, I now went ahead to stitch it separately. Okay, but just continue watching, you will not get confused at all. So I had to just cut out everything entirely so that I can now fix them separately. Okay, so on this other piece which I cut out, you can see now that I now cut out 1 inch. So you can see I'll now separate this. Okay, so you see what I'm doing right here, please don't get confused. So all you're going to do is that you're now going to get the ends of this collar on the parts where your zipper will be fixed. So right sides facing each other, you're going to stitch this smaller piece to your collar on that straight part. Okay, make sure they are both facing each other, and I'll stitch everything and now turn it out from this straight part. So I've gone ahead to do this. This is for the bigger collar, and this is for the smaller collar. So you can see how I later attach this. I stitched the sides and also that zipper part, as you can see right here. Okay, so when I was done stitching, it was no longer up to 1 inch. So please don't make the same mistake I made right here. Okay, so I'll now flip this now to the right side. You can see what we have. So we are going to start joining all of this collar to our dress. So on that shoulder part where this will be fixed, I'm going to fold this my collar into 2 to get the middle. That middle will be sitting exactly on the joints I have on my shoulder, and you can see what it's looking like. So you see, so this is how it should be as well. Okay, so right sides facing each other. The right side of my collar now is facing the right side of my fabric, like it's on top of it on the shoulder. So I'm going to also pin this together and now get my lining piece. Remember I told you that whatever you are doing for your main fabric, you have to repeat the same thing for your lining piece. So the same way I joined this my fabric is the same way I joined for my lining piece on the shoulder. Okay, so I'll now bring down my lining piece to now cover this up. All right, so you see I also iron my seam open for my lining piece on the shoulder, so you can see it right here. It's not confusing at all. So I'm going to stitch now on that part, on that straight part, all the way into the zipper, then to this other side as well. Okay, so I'm not going to touch the armhole. I'm not stitching the armhole. Okay, so this is for the right side. Now I'll go ahead and also fix my collar. So on the middle of this my collar, I'll pin it to the joints I have on my shoulder. So I'm going to now pin this all around. Then I'll go ahead and use half of an inch. Remember, half of an inch that was given when I was cutting out on my fabric, that is what I'll use to stitch this all around. Okay, so when I'm done doing all of that, you see what I have right here. I've stitched the collar for the back part, and I also flip this to the right side, so you see, and I ironed it as well. So after stitching, just flip it to the right side and iron. So for the front part of my blouse and the back parts, I've also stitched the collar together, as you can see right here. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to join the sides of my fabric together. So I would have actually done this before fixing the collar, but there is no cause for alarm. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is to get the back part of this my dress on that shoulder. So we know that this shoulder now is for the front part, so from that part where we cut out the shoulder for the front, that is where I'm going to pin this right sides facing each other. So now the front part of our blouse collar is in between the fabric and also this back piece we have right here. I don't know if what I'm explaining is not confusing at all, but just look at what I'm doing, okay, please. So when you now pin that back part of our dress to this part on the shoulder, you go ahead and now use your lining piece right sides facing each other to now pin this around the neckline area. So even if my explanation is not so clear, what I'm doing right here on this video is 100% clear. Okay, so your lining is going to be right sides facing your fabric as well. So you're going to pin it around on the neckline area till you get to these ends of the other side of your neckline. Okay, right sides facing each other, and I'll pin. Then after pinning, I'm going to stitch this down using just half of an inch. So after that, you now join your fabric at the side. That's the front part and the back part, not the other smaller part. Okay, we have not gotten up to that point right here. Okay, so it's just the sides of the part which has a normal shoulder, that is the sides we are joining. So my stitching allowance is 1.5 inches, and that is what I'll be using to join them together. I'll repeat the same thing for my lining piece, don't forget. So when you are now done joining, if you now flip this, see, so you can see when you now turn this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so just turn everything to the right side by the time you are done stitching this. Okay, so you can see for my lining piece, everything is the same. So you can see that this other smaller back part has now been joined on the shoulder to the front part of this my dress. Okay, so I had a slight issue with the side joining, so I'll just go ahead and just trim off the side. I'm not touching the part that is the center part where our zipper will be fixed. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a slight curve so that it can align with the front part of my blouse at the base. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to also curve out that other side. Please don't curve it out like the front part, it's just for the side to align when we are joining the both together. Okay, so this is just simply how I went about that. So we're going to go over now to the base of the front part of this our dress. So now we are going to work on the base. I just decided, this is me just deciding to trim off that center part just a little, just slightly. Okay, please, you must not necessarily do it. Okay, so now we're going to work on the base. So remember that while I was cutting on my fabric, I made mention of leaving 3/4 of an inch for stitching at the base. Okay, so that's 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to add extra half inch to it. Okay, so I'm going to now mark okay, at the end of the day I ended up marking 2 inches away from the base of this my blouse. Okay, so I'm going to mark this all around on the base. Okay, so I'll tell you all the reason later. but go ahead and just mark this from the side front all the way to this other side front, and I'm going to stop there and connect all these points together. So this is for me to have a guide for me to actually fix that the stylish designs we have at the base with our Ankara piece. So this rope I have is a rope, okay, normal rope, you just fold twice and stitch. So it's about, I think, 200 inches. Okay, like I made it very long so that I wouldn't be short of this rope, though at the end of the day I had excess of this rope. When I got to the end of my blouse I cut it out, but it is better to be on a safer side. Okay, so now I'm going to be stitching this rope starting from this line which I measured. Okay, so but all I'm going to do is that from the side front first I'll mark my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches, okay, so that my rope will start from there. So at this point you just have to be a little bit more creative. Okay, so I pin my rope and I'm kind of crossing it in an X. Okay, just like this X this way. I'll pin it again. So initially I wanted to use a gum to gum this rope to my fabric, but after much consideration I had to stitch this, though it's going to take more of your time, but there was a way I went about this which is going to be quite easier. So this was me trying to use my gum, but it wasn't, you know, this gum you need to leave it to dry small, so it was really going to take my time. So that is why I now had to start pinning, so that when I'm done pinning I will stitch as well. So in an X you continue folding this on top of that line. So I'm not going to go below or above that line, I'm just going to be pinning this exactly on this line. So the effect of this round part will be sitting on top of the fabric is actually okay, but for the lines, you know, that stretch part that will pin first before creating this design will be exactly on this line. I don't really know if I'm confusing you all, but please, you can see everything I'm doing right here is clear to you all. So follow the shape, or you can decide to do your own stylish design you want, or you can even decide to leave the stylish design, but this adds more beauty to the dress. Okay, so when I'm now done I'm going to be stitching this all around to this other side front. Okay, so now I'm done stitching. So for this first two designs I stitched it all around, but when I got to the third one I just started stitching on these ropes. Okay, so I just started stitching on this rope, then later I will now use my gum to now gum, you see that circle part, I will now use my gum to now gum it together on my fabric. I hope it's not confusing. Okay, all right, so that is what I'm going to do. That will be later. I'll do that later behind the camera, so you all still see the after result. So what I now did is that I now faced my lining right side facing my fabric. I remember that I pushed that smaller back part of my blouse at the middle, so it's inside, it's like at the middle of my fabric now and my lining piece, right sides facing each other, because I have to stitch this now all around. So for the sides I'm using 1/4 of an inch to join. At the base I'm using 3/4 of an inch. So on that slit you saw how I showed you all how to join this. Okay, so while I was stitching I actually fixed my hemming gum. I stitched with on top of my hemming gum so that it will be easier for me to actually iron this, so that I can have a flat base or finishing. Okay, so when I was done with this, now I now flip this now to the right side. I'm yet to iron this out. Okay, so you see all the parts I went ahead to stitch, so you can see. Okay, so on that slit, when you stitch, you get up to that slit, just stitch it straight, and now continue with your stitches just as I showed you all earlier. So we still have that back part separate. We are just going to turn it right sides with the lining, and now I'm now going to stitch that side. So for the sides I'll be using 1/4 of an inch to stitch it, and the base I'll be using just 3/4 of an inch. So I've done that separately. So at this point now you can see what I have on the inside, and this is the right side. This is looking all neat. Okay, so everything I turned that was from the armhole at the end of the day. So I'll now be joining that smaller back parts to the right side, to the front side, sorry, of my blouse. So while you are joining this, to know that you are on a safer side, once the back part of this smaller part aligns with that cuff part for the front part of your blouse, just know that you are on the right track, like you got everything perfect. Okay, so I'll now use my initial stitching allowance of 1.5 inches, but because I used 1/4 inch to stitch this at the both sides, I ended up using just 1 1/4 inch to stitch them together. So I'll go ahead and also add my zipper. It's an invisible open head zipper which you can open up all through. All right, I hope you're not confused at all. So it can actually zip out or zip down very well. Then I use these beads or these pearls I have with my gum to now decorate these spaces I have at the base of this my blouse. So that is just it for the tutorial. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thank you all so much for watching. So for the beads, you can still use multicolors of beads so long as the color is also in this Ankara piece you are using. I'll see you all in my next one. Have a lovely time ahead of you. Bye.